Look at a photo of yourself from 10 years ago. Same eyes, same name, the same person, obviously. But think about what that younger version of you believed, what they wanted, what frightened them, what thrilled them, how they'd have answered if you asked them who they were. You might barely recognize the answers. And that raises a strange question. If enough has changed, in what sense are you even the same person at all? The real answer is far stranger than the myth you've probably heard. You've likely been told that every 7 years you become a completely new person, that every cell in your body is replaced, so the old you is literally gone. It's a lovely idea. It's also not true. Some of your cells do turn over constantly. The lining of your gut renews in days. Your skin sheds and regrows. Your red blood cells last a few months. But other parts of you barely change at all. The neurons in the core of your brain are, for the most part, as old as you are. The lenses of your eyes, much of your heart muscle. You are not wiped clean and rebuilt on a 7-year timer. That part is a comforting fiction. But here's what makes this interesting. Even though the myth is wrong about your cells, something like it may be true about your personality. Because the person you are, the traits that feel most fixed, most permanently you, are quietly shifting the entire time, just not on the schedule you were promised. To understand how, you have to know how psychologists actually measure a personality. For decades, researchers have converged on 5 broad traits that capture most of what makes people different from one another. Openness, how curious and drawn to novelty you are. Conscientiousness, how organized and disciplined. Extroversion, how much you draw energy from other people. Agreeableness, how warm and cooperative. And neuroticism, how prone you are to anxiety and negative emotion. These 5 are sometimes called the Big Five, and for a long time, the assumption was that once you reached adulthood, your scores on these traits were basically locked, set like plaster, as the psychologist William James famously put it. He was wrong, and we needed decades of data to prove it. The person who did more than almost anyone to overturn that idea is a researcher named Brent Roberts. He and his colleagues gathered together huge numbers of long-term studies that tracked the same people across years and sometimes decades, and asked a simple question: do personality traits actually change in adulthood? The answer was clear and consistent. They do. Not randomly, and not in a way that erases who you are, but they move steadily in patterns so reliable that they have a name. It's called the maturity principle. As people age, on average, they become more conscientious, more agreeable, more emotionally stable. In other words, across your 20s, 30s, and 40s, you tend to grow more responsible, more considerate, and less anxious. The rebellious, disorganized, emotionally volatile person many of us were at 20 is not a fixed identity. It's a stage. Most people, quietly and without noticing, grow out of it. This isn't a Western quirk either. Researchers have found the same drift toward maturity across dramatically different cultures, which suggests it's tied to something deep in how humans develop. Why would this happen? Why would people, all over the world, tend to drift in the same direction? One clue is the timing. The biggest personality changes tend to cluster in young adulthood, exactly the years when people take on their first serious jobs, their first committed relationships, their first real responsibilities. It's as though life hands you a set of demands, and slowly, to meet them, you become the kind of person who can. The change isn't random drift. It tracks the shape of a human life. So how much do you actually change? Here's a way to picture it. Imagine your personality has a set point, like a thermostat. In the short term, day to day, you hover around it. You have good days and bad days, but you return to your baseline. The catch is that the baseline itself slowly moves over the years, and over a long enough stretch, it can move a very long way.
One landmark study followed people across an astonishing span of time. Researchers found a set of personality ratings made on a group of teenagers in Scotland in the 1940s when their teachers scored them on qualities like self-confidence, perseverance, and stability of mood. Then, more than 60 years later, the researchers tracked those same people down as elderly adults and rated them again on the very same qualities. What they found was striking. Across a whole lifetime, the correlation between the teenager and the old person was almost nothing. On some traits, the oldest version of a person bore little detectable resemblance to their 14-year-old self. Over a few years, you are recognizably the same. Over 60, you may be, in measurable terms, a nearly different person wearing the same name. Does that unsettle you? It should, a little. But stay with it, because the mechanism behind it is one of the most hopeful things science has discovered about being human. Because personality change isn't just something that happens to you. A great deal of it is driven by what you do, by the roles you step into. This is called the social investment principle, and the idea is simple. When you commit to something that demands a certain kind of behavior, a serious relationship, a first real job, becoming a parent, the role reshapes you. You start acting more responsibly because the situation requires it. You show up on time because the job needs it. You think about someone else's needs before your own because the child depends on it. And if you act that way long enough, it stops being an act. The behavior sinks in and becomes trait. The role doesn't just fill your days, it rewrites you. Think about what that means. You are not simply carried along by your personality, like a passenger in a car that someone else is driving. Every commitment you make, every environment you choose to spend time in, every version of yourself you practice being, is slowly voting on who you become. A person who repeatedly chooses courage becomes, over years, measurably braver. A person who repeatedly withdraws becomes, over years, more withdrawn. The traits follow the actions. Not always quickly, but relentlessly. Who you are, in a sense, is just the accumulated residue of what you've done again and again. There's a subtle and important point buried in here. It means the environments you put yourself in are quietly shaping you, whether you intend them to or not. The people you spend the most time with, the work you do every day, the habits you repeat without thinking. All of it is applying a slow, steady pressure on the person you are becoming. You are always marinating in something. The only question is whether you chose it. And there's newer evidence that this can happen faster and more deliberately than anyone expected. A psychologist named Nathan Hudson ran a series of studies asking whether people could intentionally change their own personality traits, on purpose, if they wanted to. He had participants set goals to become, say, more extroverted or more conscientious, and then gave them small, concrete challenges that pushed them to act like the person they wanted to be. Someone who wanted to be more outgoing might be challenged to say hello to a stranger. Someone who wanted to be more organized might be asked to make a plan for their day. The results were remarkable. People who actively pursued change, who kept taking the small actions week after week, actually shifted their measured personality traits over just a few months. But there was a crucial catch. Simply wanting to change did nothing. The people who only wished to be different, without taking the small, concrete actions, didn't move at all. Wanting it was not enough. Wanting it and then doing the small things repeatedly was what worked. That distinction matters more than almost anything else in this story. It's the difference between a wish and a practice.
Your intentions do not shape you. Your repeated actions do. This is why simply deciding to be a more patient person on New Year's Day changes nothing by itself, while patiently doing one hard thing every day slowly turns you into someone patient. The trait is downstream of the behavior. You do not think your way into a new personality. You act your way into it, one small repetition at a time. So let's return to that photo of yourself from 10 years ago. The myth said the old you was gone, dissolved cell by cell, replaced by a stranger. That's not what happened. Your body carried you here mostly intact. The neurons that held your earliest memories are still there. But the person inside that body, the pattern of hopes and fears and habits that you call yourself, has genuinely traveled a great distance. Not because time erased the old you, because life and the 1,000 small choices you made inside it gently rewrote the old you into this one. Which leaves you with a question the myth never asked. If your personality is not a fixed statue, but a slow living process, still forming, still open, then the version of you that exists 10 years from now has not been decided yet. It has not been written. It's being drafted right now. In the roles you take on, the people you surround yourself with, and the small things you repeatedly choose to do today. You are not stuck with who you are. You never were. So look at that old photo one more time. You're not looking at a stranger who was replaced. You're looking at an earlier draft of a story that is still being written. And the remarkable thing, the thing worth carrying with you out of all of this, is that the draft is still open. The next chapter isn't written yet. And for the first time, you know you're the one holding the pen.